Our guest today is Supervisor Nate Miley, who has served on the Alameda County Board of Supervisors for more than 20 years. Thanks for speaking with me, Supervisor Miley.
Yes, thank you.
So my first question today is, what are you looking forward to doing as the pandemic situation improves?
The pandemic situation improves. Well, I'm looking forward to just being able to get back and be with people, both in my personal and private life, as well as in my professional life. It's been very challenging not being able to gather with people, go to events, have in-person meetings and functions and things of that nature. And even though I've been able to see some of my family members in person, it still has been very limited. And then larger gatherings with them, like my granddaughter's birthday is coming up soon, and it's going to be a very limited get together of maybe half a dozen of us as opposed to a more festive, larger event. So I think that's the biggest thing I'm looking forward to as the pandemic eases, just the mere fact that we will have that option again of just getting together. I really feel that, the personal interaction is really, really important. And to take that option away from us is just very disconcerting.
Awesome. What are the next steps we should take with COVID-19?
Well, with COVID-19, I think as the opportunity presents for everyone to get vaccinated. Right now, anyone over 16 can get vaccinated. People should definitely get that vaccination. Either the Pfizer, the Moderna, or the Johnson & Johnson, because all three vaccines are appropriate. And as people begin to get vaccinated, that will help to get us closer to herd immunity and normalcy. And even with getting vaccinated, we still need to follow the instructions, the advice of our public health officials to continue to socially distance, wear our mask, and practice all the safety protocols, even as we have been vaccinated, until we get to a point of the public officials feeling that that is no longer a necessity. Once we get vaccinated, there are kind of bubbles we can create and not necessarily be as concerned and be unmasked, but that still isn't quite back to total normalcy. So I think the biggest thing is to get vaccinated and continue to follow the public health orders. We have more vaccine that's being made available. We expect to have more of a supply, and that's being indicated presently as well. I'm not saying we have excess vaccine, but we do have vaccine that allows for a number of people to get vaccinated. At some point in the very near future, we should even be able to set it up so that people will be able to just get vaccinated and not necessarily have to set up appointments. We're getting closer to that as well. So I think that is probably the most important thing that I think everyone can do.
Awesome. How can the government encourage people to take the COVID-19 vaccine?
Well, first of all, I know I've gotten vaccinated. I waited my turn. I didn't try to jump the line or anything like that. I was very conscientious and self-aware of that. My medical provider is Kaiser. So I waited until Kaiser sent me a notification that I could set up an appointment to get vaccinated. And this took place in March, first part of March. I got that notification, and then I got my first shot of the Pfizer, and then my second shot at the end of March from Kaiser. So I think the best thing that the government can do is, not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. Actually, everyone needs to go out and get vaccinated. We need to indicate to people that we are getting vaccinated. All of the leaders, we need to have trusted messengers get vaccinated, and them trusted messengers deliver that message to people. And in some cases, trusted messengers, they might vary in terms of who they are. So, it could be an elected official. It could be a celebrity. It could be a medical provider. It could be a family member or friend. I mean, I don't know who a trusted messenger is that will resonate with someone who is hesitant about getting vaccinated. but the government needs to try to encourage as many trusted messengers to spread the word and indicate that, hey, this is okay to get vaccinated, and then let people know, what vaccine they took, and that, yeah, this is working for me. I got for Johnson & Johnson, I got Pfizer, I got Moderna, and I'm doing fine. So I think the more we can indicate to everyone that we are getting vaccinated, and the government is promoting that in an informed and responsible way with as many messengers as possible, I think that is the best thing that a government can do. And I don't want to be remiss in this, because I am troubled by the fact that even though we're getting vaccinated in this country, there are people in other countries that are not getting vaccinated, and they don't have the vaccine. So I think we really need to be mindful of that as well, how blessed and how fortunate we are to be Americans and be living in this country that we have the ability to get vaccinated, and not take that privilege for granted. So I think that's another message that needs to be indicated to all the populace of this country, that other countries are begging to get vaccinated. The pandemic is reaping havoc in like India. And here we have people who are hesitating. No, think of this as a blessing from the Almighty, and get vaccinated.
What has President Biden done in office so far that you think is significant?
Oh my goodness. I think what President Biden has done is send an air of hope and uniformity and confidence, as opposed to disunity, disconcertion, um, uh, just malicious rumors and maligning people and things of that nature. Biden has been like a steady voice of calm, a leader who's been encouraging everybody to get vaccinated. And I think I just love the fact that President Biden tells people it's your patriotic duty to get vaccinated. I love that when he says it's your patriotic duty to get vaccinated, so that people understand from the highest levels of our government, the person who's in charge of our country, and I mean, literally has the power of, getting us into conflicts and things of that nature, is encouraging everybody to get vaccinated because it's their patriotic duty. So just sending that message of calm, hope, confidence, and having a sense of stability and comfort, I think is what the president has done, and getting vaccine out into the community, out into all the states, and then encouraging people to once again wear your mask, socially distance, do things of that nature, and not necessarily, as I said, maligning anyone for either their positions or their differences of opinions or anything of that nature, but saying we're all in this together and we need to work together to accomplish, success and beat this virus, this pandemic. President Biden, I kind of think of him as Uncle Joe. And, Uncle Joe's out there, he's saying, let's do this. And so, okay, let's all get behind Uncle Joe and make this happen.
What would you like to see President Biden do next?
I'd like to see the president ensure that we get we provide more vaccine to countries throughout the world, work in concert with other countries that have a vaccine, and that we're getting as much vaccine out into different countries. I know I heard on the news even last night how one doctor was saying that the virus isn't just a virus that is affecting us. Obviously, it's an international pandemic. It's a worldwide pandemic. Until we get everyone vaccinated, or as close as we can get to getting everyone vaccinated, we haven't achieved our job. So just like President Biden has kind of looked at this as a fight that we are in to beat this virus in this country, I think that same mindset needs to be taken on by him internationally and be working with all of the countries, working with the United Nations, working with the World Health Organization, working with all allied partners to try to see how we can get as much vaccine into both the industrialized and underdeveloped countries as quickly as possible, and have a strategy for doing that. Because at the moment, I don't know if there's a comprehensive worldwide strategy. I think, we're developing a stronger strategy in this country. I think there's one worldwide. So I think that's one thing I think President Biden can continue to do. And I think there are other issues that I know are pressing upon him. And I think continue to have a message of unity, trying to work across the aisle with the Republicans, trying to unify the country, trying to say, we might have differences of opinions, but we're not enemies. Trying to look at the issue of immigration, because that's important, what's happening on our borders, looking at police reform. That's another, really important issue, trying to make sure that there's resources. And I think he's doing a tremendous job in terms of getting resources out into the public sector, the governments, to other sectors of our society. Stimulus checks and things of that nature, so that, because that's vitally important, because I think what we learned through the Great Depression was that government didn't provide that type of largesse to help prevent a recession and then ultimately a depression. So I think by getting all this money out and the Federal Reserve being supportive of that as well, it's helping to provide resources so families can can survive, can get food, can thrive, and things of that nature, despite what's going on around us with the pandemic. And I know, I recognize that it's producing more of a deficit for the federal government, but at some point we'll be, I think we'll be able to make adjustments and deal with that more readily in the future. But right now, we've got to buttress everybody as best as possible so that we don't spiral into a recession and then into a depression, and things get even worse because of the pandemic. Because the sectors of our society haven't been shut down for so long. A lot, some people are not going to rebound from that, like the rest of certain people in the restaurant industry, for example. So trying to do things that provide those resources, I think, has been one of the other things that I think he's done a tremendously effective job with. And obviously Congress has supported him on that, because he couldn't do it without the support of Congress. So I think those are some of the things. And then, as I was alluding to, there's some other critical issues that I think he needs to continue to pay real close attention to as well.
What do you think about the Derek Chauvin verdict?
Well, clearly, I believe Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd. It was unnecessary for him to Chauvin to discharge his duties the way he did. And the fact that Chauvin was convicted, I wasn't surprised he was convicted. I was surprised that he was convicted on all three counts. I thought he'd probably be convicted of minimally manslaughter, maybe second degree, but I didn't think he'd get convicted on all three counts. So the fact that that happened, I think that sends a powerful message, an extremely powerful message to law enforcement, that they have to discharge their duties in a constitutional and responsible manner. Otherwise, they could be charged with manslaughter, murder, and they could be sentenced and convicted. It also indicates to law enforcement that they will be held accountable for their activities, for their behaviors, how they go about discharging their professional responsibilities. I'm not, and I do think Chauvin will probably get, I keep thinking he's going to get more than 20 years in jail. Maximum, if I recall, the maximum could be life or 40 years or more, something like that. So I think he's going to minimally get 20 years in jail. And the other thing I think that's of concern to me with the Chauvin verdict, and also what's going on throughout our country, and I'm going to be honest about this, is, police officers have a tough job. I mean, they have an extremely tough job. I mean, they have to make decisions in microseconds. And I'm not going to say all police officers are biased and racist and want to go about discharging their duties in an irresponsible manner, but there are some. And I do think they need to be weeded out. Those officers whose there's been a pattern in practice on how they've discharged their duties, or maybe they're not psychologically capable of being a law enforcement officer. So maybe there needs to be stronger screening, also stronger training, so that police can discharge their duties, and then the public can have a sense of trust and confidence in law enforcement. I'm not one who feels we can have a society without law enforcement, but we do need to have law enforcement doing their jobs in a constitutional way. It's kind of like what President Obama was pushing for with 21st century policing, having police officers be more of guardians than warriors. We need them to be more guardians of of all of us, as opposed to that warrior mentality. And I think their training needs to be adapted to that. I'm not saying that in some instances we don't need them to be warriors, because in some cases we do, because we have some folks who potentially get their hands on dangerous weapons, and they end up having mass shootings and killings of that nature. And we do need law enforcement officers in those circumstances not to hesitate to go and try to rescue and deal with an active shooter, of which we're having too many of those instances as well. So we do need them to do that. And that's why I'm saying their job is just, it's so challenging, but I don't want to condemn all of law enforcement for the behavior of some. We need to try to improve the training. We need to have better screening, and we need to weed out those who have a pattern and practice of being irresponsible, unprofessional, and racist. And the final thing I'll say about this is, I don't think, and I acknowledge it myself, and I've said it before, I think we all have some form of implicit bias. We all have some form of implicit bias. And if anybody says they don't, I think they're lying, because I really feel there's nobody who's perfect. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. We've made mistakes and we'll make mistakes. I mean, I'm a Christian, and I believe in, God and Christ and this, that, and the other. Only Christ was perfect. None of us are perfect. So if somebody were to tell me they don't have any bias, I think they are lying. The issue is now, what choice do you make? How do you act on that? How do you discharge your responsibilities, recognizing that you have some implicit bias? And so once again, implicit bias is one thing, being racist is another thing. So I just think those are important distinctions that need to be made as well. So I know I said a lot about the Chauvin verdict. I'm really eager to hear what the sentence is going to be. But yeah, that's a lot.
So what do you think about the Governor Newsom recall effort?
Oh boy. Governor Newsom recall effort. I think people have a right under our laws to push for a recall. I know some people are upset that he shouldn't have to face this because he's done a good job. Also in California, to get somebody to get a recall, the threshold is, in terms of getting it to qualify for the ballot, the threshold is so small, and there's concerns about that. So I think ultimately, Newsom does not get recalled. I felt that all along the recall would probably qualify for the ballot. And in fact, even before people started this recall effort, I had mentioned to some folks I might have said it to my staff, might have said it to my significant other, but I know I mentioned to a few folks, this state recalled a governor, Governor Gray Davis, for a less type of crisis than what Newsom has had to deal with. I mean, the energy crisis was one thing, but that didn't really impact our lives in its totality as this coronavirus pandemic has. And so Newsom has gone about trying to um, deal with the pandemic to the best of his ability and being proactive. And he's had to make decisions and do things that have caused a lot of discomfort for a lot of us. But he's the governor, and he's listening to the advice of his people, as well as the scientific advice as well, and making the best call to protect the welfare and the life and the public health of everyone in the state. So you can criticize him, but does he deserve to be recalled because of that? I don't think so, because ultimately, anybody else in his shoes, either they would have done the same, or if they're done less, then we would have ended up probably having more people die from the virus, and it would have affected us even worse. So to try to second guess him, I don't think is justified. But I do think under our democracy and under our Constitution in the state, people have the right to put this before the voters, so the voters can make a decision around that. But at the end of the day, I don't think he's going to get recalled. I think he'll continue to be the governor of the state. And in fact, depending on how it turns out with the vote, it could even make him a stronger governor, because he could be he could defeat the recall in a manner that sends even more of a mandate to him.
What do you think about the idea of tuition-free college?
That idea of tuition-free college, I have mixed feelings about that. I think if there are young people and families who really need that support, then there should be a mechanism to provide either a free tuition or the necessary financial aid so that they can go to college. I don't think there should be universal tuition-free college, because I think if there are families of a higher income who can afford to pay the tuition, they should pay the tuition. Maybe it might be graduated, maybe they might not pay the entire amount, but they should pay that. So I don't think universal tuition-free college is appropriate. And I do think that, for instance, my son, Christopher, he went to Diablo Valley Junior College for 2 years. It wasn't as if I couldn't afford to have him go to college. Both my son and daughter, I went with them on a lot of college visits and tours, but he made a decision. He wanted to go to Diablo Valley Junior College, community college rather, for 2 years initially. And I was really happy about that, because that saved me a lot of money. Then he transferred from there when he finished to San Francisco State and graduated with a double major. And San Francisco State is a state school, so it costs some money, but not as much. But so there are options that young people can follow. So even with tuition free, if you can't afford to go to, let's say, an expensive college, you can start by going to a community college. I do think all community colleges should be as free as possible, or the cost to go there should be as minimal as possible. That should be an option for everybody when they leave high school, that if they want to continue with their education, they should be able to do that and not be burdened by a tuition to go to community college. And then my daughter, for instance, she went to the University of San Francisco, which is a private school, Jesuit college, and it was very, very expensive. So We had, financial aid and some student loans, and she got a few scholarships. But the point is, it's just something we had to do. So in terms of my feelings, that's what I'm saying. I'm kind of ambivalent about it. I do think there are options as long as community college can be maintained as a free option. Then if their families who can't afford it and their young person wants to go to a four-year school, there should be mechanisms to allow for that to happen. But I just don't think there should be universal free tuition across the country for college for everyone. I just don't think that's responsible. And then the other thing, I'm not sure how we would afford to pay for something like that as well. That's going to add another burden to all of us as taxpayers in terms of providing for that. And I do think education is really, really important. That was drummed into me. My mother, who passed away 2 years ago, was a school teacher. My sister, she's an educator as well. And my former brother-in-law, he's a school principal. And so I was definitely raised to value education. Both my sister and brother and I all graduated from high school and college. And both my sister and I have higher degrees. So I do value education, and I do think it's fundamental. So I don't want to put barriers in the way of people getting educated if they choose to, but I don't think it should be universally free. And then the final thing I'll say about that, college is not for everyone. There are other options if folks are just interested in making a decent living, a good living. The trades offer tremendous opportunities for employment and a decent wage. By entering the trades, carpenter, electrician, plumber. Like I had a plumber here just this week, and the cost for the plumber to come per hour was like $200 and some dollars. I think it was like $220 an hour just for the plumber to be here. I mean, that's pretty decent. I ended up paying him nearly $500 just to unplug my bathroom drain and to check the shower. So that's an example of everybody doesn't have to go to college and make a decent living. And then the other thing is tech. I mean, everybody doesn't have to go to college to get into the tech industry. That's another track that can be pursued in terms of coding and working with in high tech and that industry, computers, things of that nature. The technology is like, that is just mind-boggling in terms of where we've gone with technology over the last 20 years or thereabouts. So I think that's another track that can be pursued as well. It should somebody not want to go to college. So I don't want to say college is the track for everybody, but I do think those who choose that, they should be able to pursue that without barriers. And once again, I just don't think a universal free tuition is the bottom line. I think there should be some mechanisms to provide for options around that.
What are you working on currently that's of interest of young people?
Well, I am working on police reform and racial justice. So I've had an ad hoc committee or an ad hoc process working on that for a little bit more than a year. I got the Board of Supervisors to pass a resolution in support of Black Lives Matter and reparations. So I'm working on efforts around reparations for African Americans to address the historical discrimination and disadvantages that have been placed upon African Americans as a result of slavery. So we're working to pursue that and try to come up with some remedies. And when we talk about reparations, we're not just talking monetary reparations. It could be legislation, policy, programs. It doesn't just have to be in the form of a check, a monetary check. So that's something I'm working on. With police reform and racial justice, we're looking at trying to see how we can provide further oversight of the Sheriff's Department. That's allowed now through legislation that was passed in Sacramento, Assembly Bill 1185. And I know a number of jurisdictions throughout the county are also trying to put in place efforts at police reform as well. And I think that's important. I think another thing that we're working on that I would think young people would be concerned about is the quality of our environment. One thing that affects the quality of our environment is litter. And I've been working to address illegal dumping for about the last 3 years. Just had a big conference last week, a 3-day conference with over 700 people participating. It was virtual from throughout the state. It was a statewide conference to look at addressing illegal dumping um, through the 3 E's. The 3 E's are education, eradication, and enforcement, because you find illegal dumping taking place in suburban communities, rural communities, and urban communities. And it just doesn't have to occur. But illegal dumping is affecting the quality of our life. And illegal dumping is different than trash. Trash is a problem, but illegal dumping is a problem as well. And I think with the pandemic, for instance, we've seen more illegal dumping at homeless encampments and other places. We found a lot of illegal dumping. And once again, illegal dumping isn't necessarily attributed to the homeless, but sometimes people go there and take advantage of them and dump stuff there. And then also sometimes people leave things for the homeless. And once again, when the homeless finish with it, they don't have any way of discarding it properly, so it builds up as well. So that's an issue. And then on the trash side of, let's say, illegal dumping, you see like from the gloves and the mask and things of that nature, you're seeing how they're getting into our waterways, and fish are eating them, and then we eat the fish and birds eat the fish, and that can affect us. So for young people, I just think the whole quality of our life as a result of trash and illegal dumping is important. And so that's a big focus of my office at the present time. And let's see here, what else are we working on that I think would be of significance to young people? I think the only thing I would just say would be just generally trying to indicate that government is a worthy pursuit by the work of my staff to ensure that we are responsive to the constituents that call us with a myriad of issues and concerns, trying to be there to respond to their questions, trying to reassure them that government is here to be helpful. I think obviously the COVID, there's been a lot of questions about COVID over time. There still continues to be some questions and concerns regarding COVID. So just ensuring the delivery of service to my constituents and being accessible and available to my constituents, both in Pleasanton, the unincorporated community, and the portion of Oakland that I represent. I think that's important, because I really do think for young people, I just think it's vital that they understand that government, first of all, is a worthy pursuit if you want to pursue it as a career, and then also government is something that we all need, and it only functions and works as well as we allow it to function and work. So if we aren't engaged in making government function and work the way we want it to, then we're going to get the type of government that maybe we don't deserve because we haven't been engaged. I think it gets back to, I don't want to disparage the former administration, but it's sort of like when people, young people, because there was a number of young people who could have voted in 2016 who didn't get out and vote. We ended up, not getting Hillary Clinton elected president. She could have probably been the first female president, and as everybody acknowledged, she probably would have been the most prepared president in history. But we ended up getting Donald Trump elected, and I think Donald Trump was only elected because a number of young people thought, why vote? Why vote? Government, what good is it? This, that, and the other. Well, you see, when you don't get engaged and you don't exercise the privileges and the rights that we have in this country, we end up getting leaders in government that maybe we don't deserve and we shouldn't have. So my effort is to try to always encourage and indicate that government is a worthy pursuit. It's important. Uh, be engaged, be active, and even if you can't vote, still be engaged and be active because your voices can be heard. And then also your voices can influence elected officials, can influence policymakers, and can influence others who are of the age and have the right to vote as well. So that's kind of something I think my office continues to have as a big responsibility, just delivering service. Last year, or actually for the last 2 years, we were involved in a big initiative that I call Joy and Justice. And it was all about getting people registered to vote, those who could get registered, get them registered to vote, and making sure they got out and voted. And those who were not able to register and vote, get engaged. So Joy and Justice is all about civic engagement, registering to vote, and then voting. And so that was our whole Joy and Justice initiative for 2 years. So that initiative isn't as prominent in my office at the moment, but the point of the matter is still our ability to deliver service and be responsive and encourage people to be active and engaged is still at the forefront. And so talking to you today is just part of that, so that I can maybe impart my enthusiasm and a little bit of my wisdom to you, and then you'll impart that to your readers and your peers and others. And it's like, once again, I always taking one person at a time and trying to encourage them to make a difference. So I think that's another important thing that we try to continue to pursue as a priority through my office.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you for talking with us today. We really appreciate your time.
Well,
Uh,
thank you.
yeah. This has been Hannah Pilgrim from the Cache Valley Olympian.